Hi, my name is Andy Schultz, and I'm a health coach with Take Shape for Life. Today, I want to talk about getting performance in our jobs and other areas of our lives where producing results is really important by having the right physical health that will give us the energy levels we need to perform. So, there's this really good book by Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz called The Power of Full Engagement. And their argument in this book is that we spend too much effort trying to manage our time and ignoring what really matters, which is our energy. If you look at a lot of the things that we do today to try to be more productive, there are things like we'll sleep less or we'll take less time to eat and eat properly because we feel like we don't have time for those things. We got to get other stuff done. Loehr and Schwartz really talk about the fact that that doesn't help us get things done. It leads to an energy deficit in our lives, and that's what really helps us to perform at a high level. And so when we do things that we think just will give us more time in our day by compromising the way we take care of ourselves, that we actually will not get more done. So there's a story in the book that is really fascinating. And I think it's not fascinating because it's uncommon, but because it's so familiar. And it allows us to look at some of the things that are happening in our own lives from an outside perspective. And maybe we can see a little more clearly where the problem lies when we look at it from that perspective. So it's called The Disengaged Life of Roger B. And it's on page 19 in the book. And Roger B. had all these things. So if you look at these bullet points, a pretty successful life. Um, his salary was high. This story actually happened, a good number of years ago. And so he was actually, a six-figure salary was actually more uncommon than it is today. This was a life that looked very successful from the outside. However, Roger was struggling. His longtime mentor and the person who had promoted him to the VP level described him as being a C plus at best, whereas a couple years earlier he would have been an A level performer. His colleagues who were surveyed by Loehr and Schwartz described some of the things that they saw holding him back in his performance at work. And if you look at that list, it's really a very common list of things that happen in the corporate world. I know from my experience there that I can identify with a number of those things. Loehr and Schwartz engaged with Roger to solve those problems. And the things that they taught him helped him to get past that and to be a better performer again. So physical stats are obviously important. Some of the things that we saw on that list could be related to physical health. And as a health coach, this is what I work with people to help them get into a place of physical wellness that is going to be more conducive to high performance. So if you look at Roger, just to give you some context around these numbers, his body fat was 25% higher than was healthy for a man his age and height. His blood pressure was on the verge of being hypertensive, and his cholesterol was way too high, and he was 23 pounds above his ideal weight. Now let's look at some of the habits that Roger had in his life that were contributing to these problems. He usually skipped breakfast because he was always trying to lose weight. And I've done that before, but never to lose weight. I skip breakfast sometimes in the past because I was just in a hurry and I wanted to get things done. And he would eat lunch at his desk, which was something I did for a long time as well. Didn't eat well when he was traveling, which is always really hard. And then you could see, just his eating habits in general. He had a huge dinner every night. He was ready to just like go at it and not hold back. After a long and stressful day, he ate late. And then he usually had dessert, about 50% of the time. If you look at some of Roger's energy-related habits, he still smoked once or twice a day, although he considered himself somebody who had quit smoking. But this was for stress relief in his mind. And he was highly reliant on caffeine. So those middle two bullet points there, see that his energy did not come from healthy places, but from caffeine. At night, with that large dinner, he would drink several glasses of alcohol most of the time. And then with that large dinner with several glasses of alcohol, which should have really put him into a coma early after dinner, he didn't go to sleep until 12:30 or 1 o'clock each night. And right before that, he would check his email, which is not the best way to get ready for your night's sleep, but something that I think a lot of us do. And he rarely exercised. So Roger was really at a place of deep dissatisfaction in his life. He saw that he was going downhill at work. He knew that he was not fulfilling his family responsibilities. He blamed his problems on the fact that there was more pressure at work now and thought that if things would just get better at work, then his life would be better. He had no idea how to change. And Laren Schwartz helped him to understand that it was his own habits that were causing these problems in his life rather than his circumstances. And they engaged with him to help him create habits that would allow him to triumph in his circumstances rather than spend his life wishing they were different. So those habits that Laren Schwartz are going to teach Roger were all about balancing stress and recovery to increase our ability to perform at a high level. This idea is really core to their book, that we get stronger when we follow this pattern that you see in the graph. And we get stronger in 4 pretty comprehensive areas in our lives. It's not just physical, but also spiritual, mental, and emotional. And so if we think about a physical example, though, my arm, for example, if I want to perform at a higher level by strengthening the muscles in my arm, I might do some pull-ups one day, but then I'll rest for 2 days and then do pull-ups again. And by following that cycle for a period of time, I will have stronger arm muscles and be able to perform at a higher level. And this is true for mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of my life as well. And as I follow this pattern in each of those 4 areas of my life, I can perform at a higher level and handle more stress and be able to accomplish more. Now, unfortunately for Roger, and I think for many of us, our stress and recovery cycle actually looks something like this. There are areas of our lives where we're always stressed and never recovering, and there are areas of our lives where we're always recovering and are never stressed. Now, those areas that are always stressed are not getting stronger. They're not strong. They're burning out. They're getting to a point where they cannot perform at a high level. In this Roger's case, it was his mental and emotional. From his troubles at work and the high pressure environment he was facing there, he was always stressed and he never recovered. His spiritual and his physical aspect of his life, however, were down at the bottom of this graph, basically in a state of atrophy. And when you have a graph like this that's polarized, you're really not doing well in either area. And so what Roger needed to do was to oscillate each of those areas of his life and to put habits in place that would help him get ready for the stress that he would face at work. And Roger actually did that, and he became a much happier and much more productive person. As a health coach, I teach habits that help people get to a place of physical wellness that can have an impact on both mental and emotional and maybe even spiritual sides of a person's life. Some of those habits that really help us just get to a place where our body isn't dragging us down, where we don't have low energy, where our body doesn't make us feel uncomfortable or insecure. Some of those habits are getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night if you're an adult. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but skipping sleep to get stuff done puts us in a mental and physical deficit. Our mind doesn't perform as well, our muscles are less prepared for the day ahead of us, and we don't get more done, we get less done. We should eat breakfast within 1 hour of waking. This awakens our metabolism and allows us to get some energy for the day. And we should also eat 6 small meals rather than 3 large ones to keep our blood sugar levels consistent instead of peaking and spiking. And what happens when we have consistent blood sugar levels is that our metabolism also functions more consistently. We have more energy throughout the day, and we don't accumulate that unwanted weight. We should also drink in ounces at least half of your body weight. So that means if I'm 180 pounds, I should drink 90 ounces of water each day. There is a limit depending on how high your weight goes. There's a certain amount of water that you don't want to drink more than, but that's a good rule of thumb. And then I also teach people how to balance proteins and carbs in each meal and have tools and products to help get them to a point where that balance is there and they're starting to learn and understand how to do that themselves. So that's my program in a nutshell, is I help people learn and have tools to put those habits in place in their lives so that their bodies contribute to their success and high performance rather than detracting from it. And remember, that's performance at work, in athletic activities, in your family. Our body is crucial to our being our best in any of these areas. If anybody has questions about how these habits can help you in your life, or if you have a friend who you think could benefit from these habits, I would love to talk to you. My contact information is there on the screen. You can reach me at either of those places, and I'm always available and would love to have a conversation with you. Thanks for your time today.